Hey guys, welcome to my Week 14 NFL predictions video. We'll be breaking down who we think is going to win, who is going to lose, and what we predict the final scores will be for every single game for Week 14 of the NFL season. So hit that like button and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get started. So kicking things off Thursday night, December 7th, at 8:15 on Prime, we have the 2-10 New England Patriots versus the 7-5 Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you want to see some really awful quarterback play, this is the game to watch. So Pittsburgh is 6-point favorites here when you're looking at these teams. So you have the Patriots who just lost to the Chargers 6-0. So they don't even have Mac Jones. They'll probably be starting Zappe. Either way, it really doesn't matter who starts at quarterback. They're both awful quarterbacks. And then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Kenny Pickett is hurt. So it's probably going to be Mitch Trubisky starting at quarterback. But just like the Patriots, both of them are not very good quarterbacks either. Looking at the total team stats here, these are two pretty bad offenses. So the Patriots come in. They average 12.3 points per game. Pittsburgh, they average 16.0 points per game. And on defense, the Patriots give up 21.2 points per game, and Pittsburgh gives up 19.1 points per game. So the main thing that Pittsburgh basically has going for them is they still have a top 10 defense. They can get after the quarterback. They still have TJ Watt. They get pressure on the quarterback. So whether it's Mac Jones, whether it's Zappe, no matter who rolls out for the Patriots at any point during that game, they're going to be under a lot of pressure, and they are going to be forced to have to make quick decisions. And they just have a really horrible, historically bad offense. But the Patriots want to stink right now. They want the number one draft pick. They do not want to win this game. They do not want to take any chance of winning any of these games going forward. So they're going to make sure that they lose because they want to be drafting either Caleb Williams or Drake May in the draft. So looking at this game, I do have the Steelers getting the win 16-10. So I'm coming in at the push right now. But like I said before, Steelers are 6-point favorites, but I really think that line is going to get bet down as we get closer to Thursday. Now we'll be moving on to our Sunday slate of games on December 10th. Kicking things off at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the 6-6 Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are 2.5-point favorites here. So this game is a pretty close game on paper. When you're looking at the Buccaneers, so they have Baker Mayfield at quarterback. He is actually having a pretty decent year. He's not doing anything to lose them the game. He's not doing anything to win the game. He is having a very serviceable season so far, closing in on 2,800 yards. He has 18 touchdowns and 8 picks. For the Falcons, they've been kind of bouncing back and forth at quarterback between Desmond Ridder and Tyler Heineke. So no matter who is going to get rolled out at quarterback throughout the game, there's been a lot of really awful quarterback plays so far this year. For the Falcons, that's their biggest problem is the quarterback position. This team is loaded. They have weapons. They have Kyle Pitts. They have Bijan Robinson. They have a lot of weapons to be able to get the ball to. They also have Drake London. They just don't utilize the weapons properly because they don't have a quarterback that can get a ball to the playmakers. So the Falcons, no matter what this offseason, they need to be looking for a quarterback because that's what can take this team to the next level. For Tampa Bay, they still have a lot of playmakers. They have Baker Mayfield. They have Goodwin. They have Evans. Tampa Bay, they come in, they average 19.4 points per game, and the Falcons average 18.8 points per game. So they're virtually the same there. They are deadlocked on offense, and on defense, Tampa Bay gives up 20.4 points per game. Falcons give up 20.0 points per game. So these teams are basically statistically an exact match. I have the Falcons coming in here, though. So I have them getting the win at home. I have them winning 21-17, and that spread was 2.5, so I have them covering that as well. I could see Tampa Bay winning this game, though, because the Falcons aren't some good team. They're both kind of 500 teams, so it's kind of a 50-50, but I have the Falcons getting the win at home. The next game at 1 p.m. on Fox, you have the 9-3 Detroit Lions versus the 4-8 Chicago Bears. Detroit is 3-point favorites here with the Lions. So obviously they're having a great year. They are one of the favorites for the Super Bowl as of right now. They do sit at 9-3. They have Goff. He is closing in on 3,300 yards. He has 20 touchdowns and 8 picks. And the Bears have Justin Fields closing in on 600 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 6 picks. But he is a fantasy dream because he also runs for a lot of yards every single game. Looking at the total team stats here, the Lions, they average a whopping 27.3 points per game. Chicago, they average 20.2 points per game. But a lot of that was without Fields because he did miss a lot of games this year. And on defense, the Lions give up 23.8 points per game, and the Bears give up 24.7 points per game. So obviously, the Lions definitely should be the favorites on the road versus the Bears. Bears are kind of an unknown team, though, just because Justin Fields can potentially light it up. He can definitely keep this game close. That's why the spread is only 3 as of right now versus one of the top teams in the NFL, in the Lions. But looking at the Lions as a total team here, obviously they have a top 10 offense, they have a top 15 defense, so they are by far the better team. They have Goff, they have Montgomery, they have St. Brown, so they can throw it, they can run it, and they have playmakers at the wide receiver position. For the Bears, obviously, they have Justin Fields. Justin Fields is also the leading rusher, and they have DJ Moore at wide receiver. He is a stud. So the Bears are not pushovers, but I definitely have the Lions getting the win here. They are on a mission this season to try to reach the Super Bowl. I have them winning 27-17 and definitely covering that spread. The next game that we're looking at is at 1 p.m. on CBS. We have the 7-5 Colts versus the 6-6 Cincinnati Bengals. So the Colts are 1-point favorites here. This game is going to be pretty close. So with the Colts, obviously Anthony Richardson has been out the whole year. Jonathan Taylor also did miss this past week. He should be out for a couple of weeks. But Gardner Minshew has been doing pretty decent at quarterback right now, filling in for Richardson. Gardner Minshew is one of those guys where he can throw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick, or he can throw for 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. So you really don't know which Gardner is going to show up, but there's really no middle Gardner. There's just good Gardner and there's bad Gardner. But they are on the road here. They are in the playoff hunt also. For the Bengals, they lost Joe Burrow for the season. Jake Brown stepped in. They did win this game this past weekend in Jacksonville versus the Jaguars. So Jake Browning has actually looked really good for the last 2 weeks. So he's definitely one of the better backup quarterbacks. He is closing in on 700 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. But he went off versus the Jags on Monday Night Football. Looking at the team stats here, the Colts, they averaged 25.0 points per game. The Bengals, they averaged 20.5 points per game. But a lot of that was with Burrow, obviously. Looking at the defensive side, the Colts, they averaged 24.5 points per game, and the Bengals averaged 22.8 points per game. So the Colts can definitely move the ball, but they can also give up some points. But they have Gardner Minshew. They have Zach Moss at running back. So even though they don't have Jonathan Taylor, they have one of the best running back rooms in the country. They still have Zach Moss. They have Michael Pittman Jr., but the Bengals also have Joe Mixon. They have Jamar Chase. So they definitely still have some firepower. Jake Browning, like I said, he's looked really good the last 2 weeks, but it has to end at some point. I have the Colts here getting the win. I have them winning 24-21 on the road and covering the spread. The next game that we'll be looking at is at 1 p.m. on CBS. We have the 8-4 Jacksonville Jaguars versus the 7-5 Cleveland Browns. So Cleveland is coming into this game as 3-point favorites here. The Jaguars, so they just lost Monday night at home versus the Bengals. That was a pretty bad loss because obviously the Bengals were without Joe Burrow. But like I said, Jake Browning went off, but Trevor Lawrence did get hurt. As of right now, they are saying that it's a high ankle sprain. So that could mean that he just misses a couple days. That could mean that he misses a couple of weeks. We don't actually know so far right now. I'm going to be going off of the fact that he's probably not going to play this Sunday. I'm not basing that off of anything because the team hasn't said, but he was knocked out of that game Monday night. So I'm just going to bank on he has a high ankle sprain, probably going to miss 1 to 3 weeks. So I'm going to be making this prediction with Trevor Lawrence out. Obviously, if he plays, if he's healthy, that completely changes anything. But as of right now, the Browns are 3-point favorites based off of him probably not playing. The Jags do have some playmakers. They still have Etienne Jr., they still have Ridley. The Browns come in here with one of the better defenses in the country, but they also have a lot of injury issues on their own. Obviously, Deshaun Watson's out for the whole season, but it doesn't really matter because he wasn't playing that much anyways. They lost Chubb. They did get Joe Flacco up. He did play this past weekend. He's a very experienced quarterback, so he should know to just do enough to not cost your team to win the game. Rely on your defense. So as the quarterback for the Browns, you don't have to do much to win the game. You have a top 5 defense. Let them keep the game close. Just get 1 or 2 touchdowns and rely on field goals. And you still have Cooper there. So you still have a legit number 1 wide receiver. For the team stats here, the Jags average 23.8 points per game. The Browns 21.5 points per game. But for both teams, that's with their starting quarterbacks. And on defense, the Jags give up 21.6 points per game and Cleveland 20.4 points per game. I have the Browns getting the win here. Like I said, going off of Trevor Lawrence not playing, I have them winning 24-16, covering that spread, and basically the defense carrying them to the victory. Then at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 1-11 Carolina Panthers versus the 5-7 New Orleans Saints. Saints come into this game as 4.5-point favorites here. So with the Panthers, you have Bryce Young. They don't have a head coach. The Panthers have a lot of issues. They have coaching issues. They have quarterback issues. They have ownership issues. They have playmaker issues. So they're not even throwing the game here because I don't even think they have a first-round pick this year. I think they did trade that off. So there's no point in them losing the games, but they can win the games because this team is just not very good. They have a very bad roster. They could potentially win a second game this season, but this is a max 2 to 3 win team. With the Saints, they sit at 5-7. Their roster is a lot better than 5-7. They have one of the better defenses in the country. They have playmakers. They have Olave. They have Kamara. But Derek Carr's completely fallen apart the last 2 to 3 years. This guy can't throw past 5 yards. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's basically a shell of himself previously. But he was in concussion protocol, so he hasn't necessarily been cleared for this weekend, but I'm going to guess that he probably will play. If he doesn't, though, they have Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston can throw 400 yards. He can throw for 5 picks. But no matter what, I think the Saints should be able to beat up on the Panthers. Looking at the team stats here, Panthers, they average a horrible 15.9 points per game. The Saints average 21.4 points per game. And on defense, the Panthers give up a whopping 26.1 points per game, and the Saints give up 21.4 points per game. So I have the Saints getting the win here at home. I have them winning 20-17, but not covering the spread. The next game at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-5 Houston Texans versus the 4-8 New York Jets. Houston is 5.5-point favorites here. The Jets, obviously, they have the offensive rookie of the year. They have CJ Stroud, who's putting up one of the best rookie of the year campaigns ever, if not the best. He's closing in on 3,600 yards. He has 20 touchdowns, 5 picks, and he has Collins at wide receiver. So there's a 1-2 threat there. For the Jets, they're a complete quarterback carousel. So obviously, Rodgers goes down. They had Zach Wilson. They had Boyle, cut him. They signed Brett Ripien. So it's a complete disaster on the offensive side of the ball. They have absolutely nothing going for them. They do have a top 10 defense, but the problem is the defense is on the field the whole game because the offense refuses to get first down. So that puts the defense in a lot of bad short field positions. Looking at the team stats here, the Texans average 23.4 points per game. The Jets 14.3 points per game. A lot of bad offenses this year, but they come in at 14.3 points per game. And on defense, the Texans give up 20.8 points per game, and the Jets 20.9 points per game. But that's not indicative of the defense. Like I said, they are on the field the entire game. They are under pressure the whole game. They're the only thing that even carries this game to make the games competitive. The Texans were 5.5-point favorites here. So I have the Texans getting the win. They are having a surprisingly hot season so far. They have to win. The Jags are down. Potentially Trevor Lawrence is hurt. This is your chance to make up some ground, try to catch them. I have the Texans winning 27-16 and covering the spread. Next, we'll be moving on to the 1 p.m. game on Fox. We have the 6-6 LA Rams versus the 9-3 Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore here is 7-point favorites. So Baltimore is on a mission as of right now. They do hope to get Mark Andrews back, so that will make this team even better. But they're one of the few teams with a top offense as well as a top defense. For the Rams, they can give up a lot of points, but Stafford has been slinging it so far this year. So they had Cooper Kupp, they had Nakua, who did get hurt, but he came back and played. He is supposed to play this Sunday as of right now. So this team has some weapons at wide receiver. Looking at the team stats here, The Rams come in, they do average 22.3 points per game. Baltimore, they average 27.0 points per game. And on defense, the Rams give up 21.1 points per game, and Baltimore a very low 15.6 points per game. So Baltimore has a top 5 offense. They have a top 5 defense. There's only 2 or 3 teams in the entire country that are top 5 in both categories. So this is a very well-rounded team, and they have Lamar Jackson, they have Gus Edwards, they have Flowers, and they hope to get Mark Andrews back soon. So this is going to be a pretty high-scoring game potentially, but the Ravens have the better defense. So if they need to stop in the fourth quarter, they have that defense that they can lean on. So I'm going to go with the Ravens winning this game 28-24, just not covering the spread. The next game that we'll be moving on to is at 4:05 on Fox. We have the 6-6 Minnesota Vikings versus the 5-7 Las Vegas Raiders. So Minnesota is 3-point favorites here. This is a tough game because to me, these teams are kind of in the same position. With the Vikings, they lost Jefferson for a while. They lost Kirk Cousins for the season. But Kirk Cousins went on a long winning streak. He goes out. They pick up Josh Dobbs. He continues the winning streak. But it was a Cinderella story that was basically bound to end at some point. It's completely fallen off the rails the last 2 weeks. He has 5 picks in the last 2 games. But statistically, this could be the game that he gets things back on track. For the Raiders, they obviously fired Josh McDaniels. They have Pearson as the interim coach. They are starting at quarterback O'Connell. He's not very good. He's had some good games. He's had some pretty bad games. But the Vikings are starting the always backup Josh Dobbs. So with these teams, looking at the offenses here, Minnesota, they average 21.9 points per game. The Raiders average 16.8 points per game. And on defense, Minnesota gives up 20.2 points per game. Las Vegas gives up 21.3 points per game. So basically, the only reason that Minnesota is favored here is just because we don't know anything about the Raiders. But the Raiders actually have a way better roster than they've been playing. They still have Josh Jacobs. They still have Devontae Adams. They have playmakers there. Issue has been quarterback the whole season, and it's been coaching. Coaching has been fired. They still have the quarterback problems, but the Vikings are so beat up. I flip-flop back and forth. This game's 50-50. I don't really know who is going to win this one. I don't want anything to do with this game, but I'm going to go with the +3. I have the Raiders winning 21-17. I'm just thinking that their running game is better and that their defense will get a stop when they need it. At 4:05 p.m. on Fox, we have the 6-6 Seattle Seahawks versus the 9-3 San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco comes in here as a whopping 10.5-point favorites here, so they have them beating the crap out of the Seahawks. Seahawks just had a pretty good game this past weekend. Geno Smith looked really good. DJ Metcalf went off. He had 3 touchdowns for the 49ers. Basically, since they came back off of their bye week and they curb stomped the Jaguars, they've been hot. They've been scoring. They've been shutting people down. So since they went on that 3-game losing streak, they completely turned things around. They're back to their old self. This is one of the best rosters, top to bottom, in the whole country. Looking at team stats here, Seahawks average 22.0 points per game. San Francisco comes in, they average 29.3 points per game. And on defense, the Seahawks give up 24.2 points per game. San Francisco, a very low 15.8 points per game. Just like the Ravens, they have a top 3 offense. They have a top 5 defense. So top 5 in both categories. This is a very deadly team. They are on a mission this year. They're loaded from top to bottom. They have playmakers everywhere. They have Brock Purdy. They have Christian McCaffrey. They have Ayuk. They have Kittle. It's just so many weapons. They can do anything that they need. They can throw it, run it. They have playmakers at wide receiver. They have playmakers at tight end. They have a shutdown defense, and they added Chase Young to that defense. So that's why they're such high favorites. I have San Francisco winning as of right now, 31-21. So not covering the spread. That's a pretty high spread. So it might come down just a little bit, but they'll still be pretty heavy favorites. At 4:25 p.m. on CBS, preseason, this would have been one of the best games of the year. But we have the 6-6 Buffalo Bills coming off the bye versus the 8-4 Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs need a bye so bad because they've been sliding backwards for the last couple of weeks. But Kansas City is at home. They are 2.5-point favorites at home. When you're looking at the Bills, obviously they have one of the better team rosters in the country. They have a very good offense. They have a very good defense. They do have a lot of turnovers. And When the defense doesn't play well, the offense doesn't play well. Vice versa. They can never get both sides of the ball going at the same time. That's their biggest problem. For the Chiefs, they come in here with one of the best defenses in the country. They get after the quarterback. But surprisingly, their issue is the offense. Not Patrick Mahomes, not Travis Kelce. It's the wide receiver core. They have butterfingers. They drop everything. They have no legit number one wide receiver that would be the number one threat on any other team. He is just the number one by default on this roster because they have no number one receivers. That's their biggest issue. You don't really get into a shootout with the Chiefs. It's the defense that usually wins the games for this specific Chiefs team right now. But they are the favorites in this game. Looking at the team stats here, the Bills average 27.3 points per game, Chiefs 22.9 points per game, and on defense, the Bills give up 18.9 points per game, and the Chiefs give up 17.3 points per game. For the Bills, both teams need to win this game. Bills need to win it because their coach is getting fired, and they can't drop below 500. They're still somewhat in the playoff hunt, but they have to turn things around the last month and a half of the season. They have to start here. They have to win this game. For the Chiefs, they can't continue sliding backwards. They cannot drop to 8-5. I'm going to go here with the Bills. I have the Bills getting the upset win 27-24. So I'm going with the plus 2.5. As of right now, I think this game could go either way, but I'm going with the Bills just because they need it more. The next game that we'll be looking at 4:25 on CBS, the 6-6 Denver Broncos, who their 5-game winning streak finally ended, which we called that this past weekend. They did lose, but still they're 5-1 in their last 6 games, so that's nothing to fret at. And the Chargers, they are 5-7. The Chargers come in here. They are 3-point favorites here at home. For the Chargers, they won that god-awful 6-0 Patriots game. That was pathetic for the Patriots. That was pathetic for the Chargers also, because the Patriots don't have a good defense. How do you only muster 6 points in that game? Obviously, Russell Wilson is not doing anything to win games. He's just being very efficient so far this year, throwing for 150 to 200 yards, 1 or 2 touchdowns, not doing anything to lose games, relying on the running game and their defense. Chargers, obviously, they have a really good offense on paper. They have Herbert, they have Eckler, they have Keenan Allen. They have playmakers on defense, but they don't have a good defense. Coach should be fired, though, after this year, but they also need to win these games. You have the Broncos coming in here. They average 21.9 points per game. LA, they average 22.9 points per game. And on defense, Denver gives up 25.2 points per game. But that's kind of thrown off because they gave up 70 points to the Dolphins. And the Chargers average 21.5 points per game. Obviously, the Chargers technically have the way better roster on paper. They are favorites, but that 6-0 win versus the Patriots really scared me. That was pathetic versus a very pathetic team. I want the Chargers to do better. I like Justin Herbert, but they need a complete redo on the coaching staff. Broncos, I think, get things back together. They can run the ball. They cannot make mistakes. I'm going to go with the Broncos winning this game, 24-21. So I'm going to go with that +3 for this one. The next game is the game of the week, the last game on Sunday night, 8:20 p.m. on NBC. The 10-2 Eagles at the 9-3 Dallas Cowboys. Dallas is 3.5-point favorites here. Dallas plays very well at home. Dallas, just like the 49ers, they've been one of the hottest teams for the last month and a half. For the Eagles, they did lose this past week, so their winning streak is over. They're not as good as they were last year, but they have a really good record. They still have one of the better O-lines. They have Devontae Smith. They have A.J. Brown. They have Hurts. This team is loaded on both sides of the ball. But Hurts is having a decent year. Nothing like the year that he had last year. It's not a good year. It's just a decent year so far, but he has been banged up the year. For the Cowboys, they have a top 5 defense. They have a top 5 offense. This team can move the ball. They've been hot. They can score. They play really good defense. Pollard has finally gotten things back on track for the running game. Dak Prescott's basically putting up the MVP winning season right now. And then you have CeeDee Lamb, who the last 7 weeks, he's probably been the best wide receiver for the last 7 weeks. He's closing in on 1,200 yards. Looking at the team stats here, the Eagles come in, they average 27.4 points per game, so a really good offense. Dallas averages 32.3 points per game. And on defense, the Eagles give up 24.0 points per game, and the Cowboys 18.3 points per game. Dallas has the hot hand right now. They are at home. It's very tough to beat them at home. Eagles won the first game. Both teams have to win this game. Dallas has to win this game to prove that they're legit. The Eagles have to win this game to prove that they're not sliding backwards. But Dallas is the favorite here right now. I have Dallas getting the win, and I'm actually going to go with Dallas winning this game comfortably. I have them winning 30-20, so putting a beat down on the Eagles and covering the spread. Next, we're moving into the Monday slate of games at 8:15 p.m. on ESPN. We have two Monday night games this week for some reason. But we have the 4-8 Tennessee Titans visiting the 9-3 Miami Dolphins. Miami, a massive 13-point favorite here. Miami beats the crap out of bad teams. That's just what they do. They score quick and in a hurry. But they are 13-point favorites here versus the Tennessee Titans. For the Titans, they have Will Levis. He's been doing really good, way better than Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is complete trash, but Will Levis having a pretty decent rookie year so far. Not a good rookie year, but way better than Ryan Tannehill. For the Dolphins, though, this is one of, if not the best offensive roster in the country. They have so many weapons. They have Tua, they have Arcane, they have Mostert, they have Hill, they have Waddle, they have Berrios. So an assortment of weapons. They can beat you running, they can beat you throwing, and the defense has been playing really well for the last month. They've been playing really dominant, and they have one of the better rush defenses in the country right now. So with Derrick Henry banged up, that heavily leans in the Dolphins' favor. Looking at the team stats here, Tennessee, they average 17.6 points per game. Miami, a massive 32.0 points per game. And on defense, Tennessee gives up 21.3 points per game. Miami gives up 22.2 points per game. On paper, this game is not supposed to be close, and it shouldn't be close. I have Miami winning 31-17 and still covering the spread. And then our final game to close out Week 14 at 8:15 on ABC, the 6-6 Green Bay Packers versus the 4-8 New York Giants. Green Bay, 6.5-point favorites here. So when you're looking at the Packers, Jordan Love has been going off for the last 6 weeks. He's closing in on 2,900 yards. He's actually been one of the better quarterbacks in the whole country. When we were trashing him the first half, he has dominated the second half of the season. Call it what it is. The guy's looking really good right now. Closing in on 2,900 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 10 picks. And he can also run the ball. For the Giants, Daniel Jones, complete disaster. Should have never signed that guy. But Tommy DeVito has actually been playing pretty well as the backup. He has won some games, but they've kept some games pretty close. So is he the answer at quarterback? I don't know that. But it's definitely not Daniel Jones. Like I said, they should have never signed that guy. Green Bay is the way better team. They have Jordan Love, so they have one of the hottest hands at quarterback. And their defense has also been playing really good the second half. Looking at the team stats here, Green Bay averages 21.5 points per game. The Giants, a very lowly, almost as bad as the Patriots, which is pretty bad. They average 13.3 points per game, and on defense, Green Bay gives up 20.3 points per game. Giants give up 24.3 points per game. These teams are not evenly matched at all. Packers, like we said, they're coming off of a win versus the Chiefs. They can beat you on defense. They can beat you on offense. They are 6.5-point favorites here. I have Green Bay getting the win, 24-17, and covering that spread. Like we said, they are one of the hottest hands in the country right now. So I'm going to ride them till they fall off the tracks, basically. With bye weeks this week, we have the Cardinals and the Washington Commanders who need it bad because they're pretty bad right now. But that's my breakdown of the Week 14 NFL predictions. Hit that like button and subscribe. If you agree with these games, disagree with these games, drop a comment and I will make sure to respond. Thanks.